All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting here with Soren Baker, hip hop journalist, director, and author of this relatively new book called History of Gangster Rap From Schoolie D to Kendrick Lamar, The Rise of a Great American Art Form. This is how it looks like right here.
That's it.
Yeah,
Everybody, please get it if you don't have it already.
exactly. So Soren, I think it's actually a Scandinavian name, a Nordic name, right?
Yeah, it's to my knowledge, it's Danish.
It's Danish.
I'm not Danish at all, but the story is both my parents are school teachers, and they wanted to have children with names that they did not have as students.
Okay.
So my father was familiar and read a lot of Kierkegaard, so he wanted. That's who I'm named after, but it was named more so that if they were had if Johnny or Mike was bad at school that day, I they didn't come home and my name was Johnny or Mike, so they just wanted to have them totally separate. So my other brother's name is Dylan, and then I have another brother named Grant.
All right. Okay. Cool. I think
Yeah,
we actually say Soren here.
yeah, Soren.
Soren. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm friends with. It's funny. I did an interview with J Ro from the Alkaholiks on my Unique Access channel, which I have my shirt on, of course. But
Right.
my Unique Access YouTube channel, and he's told me this before, but he said it on this interview. He's like, because we were talking about he moved to Sweden, and he had just said like, man, when I first met you, I'd never met anyone with that name, but now that I go to Sweden, it's like John over there. Everyone I meet is named Soren. So he's like, I know so many Sorens now.
Yeah. Of course. But he
So
moved
that,
to Malmö, I guess, right?
what's that?
He moved to Malmö.
Yeah, Malmo, Sweden.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So yeah. So Soren Baker, like, could you just give us like a quick, brief, like, uh, introduction to who you are and how you get involved with hip hop in the beginning? Like,
Yeah, I'm from originally from Maryland, and I grew up, right in between Baltimore and Washington, about 20 miles from Washington, D.C., 20 miles from Baltimore. And when I was 10 years old, my friend had given me a cassette that had a bunch of rap on it because I'd asked him to. I didn't realize there was that much rap that existed. So this is way back in the day. So he had given me on cassette a copy of a bunch of music, and it had Dana Dane on there, LL Cool J, Curtis Blow, Run MC, Houdini, UTFO, and I just fell in love with it. And I realized from that day on, I just wanted to do something that had to do with rap. But being that my parents were school teachers, being that I lived in Maryland and there was no music industry right there, and in Baltimore they liked house music, and in Washington D.C. they liked go-go, rap wasn't really a big deal at the time. Where I was from, it was more these other types of music were more prominent. Even though people loved it, there wasn't a scene per se.
hmm,
So it wasn't until I went to college, and of course, rap was getting more and more popular every year. But when I went to college is when I started writing because I went to Xavier University in Ohio, in Cincinnati, and um, I realized when I looked at the school newspaper that they didn't write about rap at all. So I just asked them if I could write about rap and review some rap albums because I love rap and you guys don't do that. And they were like, sure, but go review some plays. So I went and reviewed one play, and then I said, "Hey, can I write about rap now?" And they were like,
right.
"Sure."
Right.
So I did. I that started my writing career, and then also I didn't realize I would get paid to write in the newspaper. So that also was another pivotal thing that I realized I could make money writing
Mm.
and hopefully turn it into a career, which thankfully and knock on wood I've been able to do, and I want to continue to do. And that's really what started me on my path.
So which one was the first albums that you reviewed? Yeah.
It was Ed OG and the Bulldogs, the
All right.
Roxbury 02119, I think. It's their zip code for Roxbury.
Okay.
And I didn't know how anything worked. So I just reviewed the album because I had it and I liked it. So Ed OG and the Bulldogs. Thank you.
Yeah. I know that guy. Yeah. Perfect.
You're the first guy, first article I'd ever written about rap.
Mm. And how long was that? Like just like a page
Just
or?
a, no, it was less than that. It was just a few hundred words in my school newspaper, the Xavier Newswire.
All right. Okay.
So
So from that point, what happened after that? Like, did you What was the
Well, I
progression?
started because I've been fortunate that I write quickly. I don't have writer's block, and I also meet my deadlines.
Hmm.
So that's all unusual for people in college, at least at my school, and at least at my school newspaper. So I got a lot of. They were like, "Oh, review this play," and then I was excited about it too because I was making money, but I was also doing stuff that I wanted to do. I was able to write about rap. They let me write about more rap, and then from there they were like, "Hey, would you want to join the staff?" Because I did this the second semester of my freshman year. So then they were like, "Oh, well, for your sophomore year, would you want to join the staff and work with us on the?" It was called Diversions. That was the entertainment section of the student newspaper, and I was like, that's a dream come true. And we got a little stipend to do that. So I get paid to write, and I got a stipend as an editor of one of the newspaper sections. So that was amazing. And then from there, I realized, I love sports. So then I started writing about sports. I played what's called club volleyball.
Hmm.
So I would travel and play volleyball around a couple of states around Ohio. So we played in Ohio and Kentucky and Indiana. But I love sports, and I love basketball. So I took some basketball photos, and then I wrote about women's volleyball for the paper. I was the beat writer for that. So I was doing a lot of sports stuff too. I didn't really do much news and things because they had other people that were, really on that. But from there, then I was writing so much for the school newspaper that one of my friends who, when I was a freshman, he was a senior, and he had told me, like, hey, I know a guy that used to go here that used to write for the Source or writes for the Source. And I was like, what?
Okay,
So
yeah.
he sent the guy my stuff because he was like, man, you're really good and you know a lot about rap and you're a good writer already. Like, let me send it to my boy. So my friend, his name was Alan Doolin, and he sent it over to now who became one of my inspirations and mentors, Kari Kamani Turner. And Kari got the package, and he was like, man, you got a lot of great articles in here, and you know what you're doing. You should really try to do this. And he goes, unfortunately, I don't write for the Source anymore, but you should really pursue this because you're talented and you're like really young. So that's all I needed to hear, man. I then learned how to interact with the publicist because I'd gone into school newspaper office one day, and this was back when they would send CDs and even some cassettes still, but they would send a lot of CDs to try to get coverage. And I didn't know how any of this worked. So I just saw these packages laying around, and I was like, oh, what do you guys get in the mail? That's a lot of packages. They're like, oh, those are albums. I was like, oh, man, that's cool. They send you the albums. Let me see one.
Okay.
And they opened it up. It was some rock group I'd never heard of, but it was in advance because the album hadn't come out yet. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't know who the artist was or anything, so I didn't know if it was a big artist or a new artist or what. But I was like, well, why is it doesn't have any artwork and the CD thing is just white? And they're like, oh, because this is what's called an advance. And I was like, well, what's an advance? They were like, oh, it hasn't come out yet. It's an advance of the album because they want you to listen to it and write about it. Right. And I was like, wait a minute, this album's not out yet? They're like, no. So I literally that summer wrote down every address for every record label. And they told me that as soon as I got back, we should, on Xavier University letterhead for the school newspaper, send it out to all the labels to try to get me on the mailing list so I could get advances of the rap albums. Mm. And so I did that. I probably emailed 50 rap labels that put out rap albums. And Relativity Records was the first one to respond. And this was in 1994. And they sent me Common had Resurrection at the time. Above the Law had Uncle Sam's Curse. Drew Down was coming out. And they were the first ones to hit me back. And then what I did was I told all the labels in my letter that I would mail them copies of my articles because I didn't want them to think I was just trying to get free CDs.
Right.
So I actually did. Like every single article, I mailed it. I mailed it back to them, and I showed them what I told them I was going to do. I did, and from there, just like avalanche. Then I started getting on. I was over the next year. I'd say I probably got on 50% of the mailing lists, and after that, I got on 75 to 90% of the mailing list by the time I graduated. And then I was, I then realized that I could try to do the same thing I did with the record labels to all the magazines. Now that I was, and one publicist called me one day. She was just like, "Hey, would you ever want to interview the artists or talk to them?" And I was like, "Wait, you mean I get to talk to the artists?" She's like, "Yeah, you write about them. Would you ever want to interview them?" I was like, "Of course." So then I got to interview Mike Geronimo, was one of the first people of Society, who was on Loop Records. I got to interview him early on. And then he's one of my best friends, but also one of my mentors, Billy Johnson Jr. He was the first one that gave me regular writing for a national publication, which was Rap Sheet. It was a rap magazine based in Los Angeles. And Tanya Pendleton had gave me first national writing, which was at YSB magazine, which was a BET subsidiary. I did an article on the Bush Babies for her. And that was when I was 19. So when I was 19, I had my first national publication. And then Billy Johnson Jr. became one of my best friends and my mentor. And he was at Rap Sheet. And he was the first person I got to fly somewhere to go interview. And that was for De La Soul. When I was in college, I got flown from Cincinnati to New York to interview De La Soul for Rap Sheet. And that was like a phenomenal experience because, of course, I love De La Soul and been listening to them since I was, 13 or 14. And then to get paid to get flown to go interview them, to write about them for a magazine was phenomenal. And we went to Mace's house, and then we were all going all around Long Island, and I got to interview them and spend the day with them, and it was phenomenal.
And how old were you? Like 20 or 19? What was that?
That I would have been either 20 or 21, depending on what time of year it happened.
Oh, okay.
I think I was 20, but I'm not sure.
Okay.